This is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching. Today's video is fun with 50 5.5-inch squares and free motion quilting. The project that I was working on had a number of different boxes and blocks in them, and after I got a little bit done, then I realized I had 50 red blocks that weren't done. I had sort of saved those, and I had to come to a decision how to handle those. And so my first goal was to not have to remove any stitches, or as few as possible, so try and get it right the first time, but then to have fun because I was going to have 50 of them, and I did not want them all to be the same. The first part of my plan was to get some inspiration. I wasn't just going to sit down with this great big quilt and say, okay, let her rock and roll. I decided I was going to go at it a little differently. So I started out by going on the internet to get some inspiration, looking through my sketchbooks, and then looking at my practice samplers of things that I had done before. And then I went and I decided it was time to, needed to practice. And to do the practice, I actually took a 5.5-inch pieces of paper so I could start to get a real idea about what size I was going to be working with. And these were a few of those, and they were in pencil, and of course we made a magic marker now so they would show up Sharpie. And those were just a few of them I tried. Didn't mean I was going to necessarily have to do those or couldn't change them, but they were some places where I was going to start. And then I also went and did some fabric squares on one of my samplers, and not necessarily these, but practiced some other shapes so that I'd have a feel of what it'd feel like with the cloth. And in the sketchbooks, go back to getting my ideas, I went through in my sketchbooks and I found all kinds of neat ideas, and I thought, well, let's see, what can I do? Can I incorporate any of these into what I was doing? And so I finally got started. Now, did I work to get 50 before I started? No, I didn't. I just started out one morning after I thought I had a nice little list, and I got ready to start, and I got the quilt ready, and I actually made myself a little cheat sheet that sat by the sewing machine, and it was a little sample of the box, and every time I did a certain pattern, I put a mark to show how many times I did it, because I wasn't going to do a lot of of those different patterns. And then back in the sketchbooks, once I got started and I ran out of things that I wanted to do, I started thinking up things that I might do. And I actually went ahead, without even sketching them in, and did them on the square in the quilt. And then I started, because I said, well, maybe one day I'd like to do another one with, it might have 3-inch squares, might have a lot less than 50 red ones. And so I actually started, as I'd finish a shape that I had put in the book, then I'd take and add it to my sketchbook. And that's sketchbook number 2. And the next part, I'd just like to show you some of the squares that I came up with. This was one. And I liked this one because it was continuous thread. I could just start and keep going and going and going, and it looked so neat when I finished it. Here was another one, and this one I just liked when I saw it. This is one of the last shapes that I had seen, and you'll see those in different places. You'd see them on different places in the quilt, and they were just so much fun. And it was basically just kept going, didn't have to do a whole lot of cutting and tying off. But you'll notice that I did start, well, this is a very big quilt, and so I didn't start in the middle. I started on the edge of the quilt, and you don't have to start on the edge, but that close to the edge is a neat place to start. There's a third one of the blocks, and I just simply drew some straight lines, and I could use my ruler foot and a straight edge and do these. You could have done them with the walking foot, but I didn't want to change back and forth. I got tired of changing back and forth. And then these were just loops that go all the way down, and the overall pattern just looks really nice. Here's an example of the orange peel, And the first times I saw that, I thought, well, have to have a form or a template to trace around to get those right. And actually, these were small boxes, and it was easier for me just to do those without a template, just a free motion to go around there. I could have used my air erase marker and done some lines, but these were small enough that I didn't have to, and it turned out cute. This was a nifty pattern that I had seen on the internet and copied. A lot of these, of course, are copied, and they're just the things that I did. That was free motion quilting on that one. This block was a little more time consuming. I wanted to do one of those that goes all the way and goes around and around. The inside is not perfect, this one, and then there's another one later I did better. But this one I used a straight edge, and a lot of time I had to turn the quilt to do this one, and that was glad that I was on the edge to do something like this. But the geometrics match a couple of the blocks in the quilt where I did blocks also, and they were inside each other. Again, there's another one where I divided the box up, and then I used the ruler foot and a straight edge and made a design in the box. That was fun. It really didn't take that long to do this one. Here was one that's sort of like a big dahlia flower, and that was easy because it was free motion, just single, going around and around and around. Here's another design. And here I marked out the lines for the borders, and then said, okay, now I got to fill in the borders. So I worked with the circles. And one of the things that I learned this week was that when working with the circles, well, first of all, got to go a little slower than regular, but then think of it as a figure 8. That you start in the center and go up and do the first one, and then come down, cross over to your right, and do the second circle. And you're going to have to travel to get down to the next place for the next circle. And think of it as you're doing a figure 8. And this one I broke the space up again, and I went back. This is a great way to practice making those circles, and then added the crisscross lines. And this is the final one I was going to show you today, and it was just fun. I broke the block up a little bit and then started putting shapes in between. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope you got a little bit out of my 50 5.5-inch square project, where my goal was not to have to take out very many stitches.